Halloween has always been my favorite holiday. The excitement of choosing a costume, the thrill of nightfall, and the candy. Oh, the candy. But after what happened last year, I can't look at a Halloween costume without my stomach lurching. It began innocently enough. My friends and I decided to have a small get-together. Sarah's place was ideal because it had a cozy den perfect for watching horror movies, and she lived just a few houses away from mine. Everyone was going for a scary costume theme, so I put together a Grim Reaper outfit complete with a faux scythe. I arrived at the party a tad late because my cape took forever to fasten. The house was pulsing with laughter, music, and the sound of ice cubes clinking in glasses. As soon as I stepped in, Jess waved at me. "Hey, you made it!" she shouted over the music. Through the sea of zombies, witches, and other monsters, my gaze fixed onto one costume. There, sitting on the corner couch, was someone dressed exactly like Katie. Katie was a local girl who had gone missing 2 weeks prior. It was all anyone in our town could talk about. She had last been seen wearing her school uniform, the same one the person was wearing now, complete with the red scarf and knee-high socks. The face was hidden behind a mask that was eerily realistic, mimicking Katie's soft features and big blue eyes. It was distasteful, grotesque. Who could be so heartless to use a real-life tragedy as a costume? I felt a mix of anger and nausea. Looking around, I noticed everyone else continuing their merriment, seemingly oblivious to the macabre charade unfolding in front of them. Wanting to confront the person, I walked over, my heart pounding loudly in my chest. "Hey," I started, my voice slightly shaky. "Who are you? Why would you wear that?" The masked individual didn't respond, just tilted her head slightly, studying me with those cold, fake eyes. Feeling unnerved but needing to unmask this cruel prankster, I reached out to remove the mask. Just before I could, Sarah grabbed my arm, pulling me away. "Don't cause a scene," she hissed. "But Sarah, don't you see? That's in bad taste. Who does that?" Sarah looked puzzled. "Does what?" "The costume. Katie's uniform, the missing girl." Sarah squinted at the costume in question. "Oh, I thought it was just a regular schoolgirl costume. Didn't make the connection. Plus, who knows all our guests? Maybe it's someone from Jess's or Tom's circle." I tried to shake off my unease, but the atmosphere had shifted for me. The laughter now seemed a shade too loud, the room a tad too cold. Every now and then, I'd glance over to the schoolgirl, but she remained in the same spot, watching, not speaking to anyone, not even touching the drink placed beside her. As the night wore on, I tried to immerse myself in the festivities. Every time I'd grab a snack or chat with a friend, my gaze would inadvertently drift back to the masked figure. She never moved, just observed silently. And each time our eyes met, I felt a shiver, like icy fingers tracing my spine. Deciding to confront the situation head-on, I approached Jess. "Do you know who invited the person dressed like Katie?" She looked confused. "Katie? Who's Katie?" "The missing girl, the one in the school uniform over there." I pointed towards the couch, but it was empty. Panic set in. The oppressive sensation of being observed returned, and I could feel someone's gaze prickling the back of my neck. I spun around, scanning the room, but the person in the Katie costume was nowhere to be seen. My breaths came fast and my heart raced. "She was right there, Jess. Someone was dressed as Katie, and now they're gone." Jess looked genuinely worried now. "Okay, calm down. We'll find her. Maybe she left." But as the minutes turned to hours and the night wore on, there was no sign of the mysterious partygoer. Everyone I asked had a similar vague recollection of the costume, but couldn't pinpoint who wore it or when they had left. It was nearing the end of the party, and my anxiety had peaked. I wanted nothing more than to head home, crawl into bed, and forget the evening. I said my goodbyes, promising Sarah I'd talk to her in the morning. The night air was cold, carrying the scent of damp leaves. My house was just a short walk away, but tonight the shadows seemed darker, the path longer. Every rustle, every whisper of the wind made me jump. Halfway home, I heard footsteps behind me. They were soft but deliberate. I quickened my pace, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But the footsteps grew louder, faster. I broke into a run. Just a few more yards and I'd be home. My lungs burned, and the weight of dread grew heavier with every step. I fumbled for my keys, glancing behind to see the figure of someone dressed in a school uniform getting closer. I threw open the door, rushed in, and locked it behind me. Peering through the peephole, I watched as the figure approached my porch, their face still hidden behind the eerily realistic mask of Katie. From behind the safety of my door, I held my breath, heart hammering against my ribcage. The figure stopped just in front of my door, standing still for what felt like an eternity. And then, slowly, they raised a hand and knocked. 3 soft, deliberate knocks. The sound echoed through the quiet of my house, each one feeling like a strike against my sanity. "Who are you?" I screamed, voice strained with terror, my eyes glued to the peephole. "What do you want?" But the figure just stood there silently, the mask's large blue eyes staring forward. Then, without warning, she turned and began walking away, disappearing into the shadows from which she came. The weight of the evening pressed down on me, and I slumped to the floor, trying to collect my thoughts. A whirlwind of emotions threatened to consume me. Fear, anger, confusion. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound, every creak of the house felt like an impending doom. Morning's first light brought some relief. I decided to call Sarah, needing to discuss last night's events. "Sarah, about last night, the person in the Katie costume. Did you ever find out who it was?" There was a long pause on the other end. "I thought you were playing a prank," Sarah finally said, her voice hushed. "When we were cleaning up, we found a school ID under the couch. It was Katie's." My stomach twisted. The room felt like it was spinning. But how? Why would she come to the party? And why was she following me? "I don't know," Sarah murmured, just as puzzled. "But maybe we should inform the police. This could be a lead." The police took the ID and began a new search based on this strange lead. They combed through surveillance footage from the neighborhood. And there it was, a figure, dressed in the school uniform, walking the streets on Halloween night. But when they tried to track her movements after she left my house, she simply vanished. Word got out, and our Halloween party became the talk of the town. Rumors spread, theories were whispered. Some said Katie was trying to communicate a message. Others believed it was someone with a sick sense of humor. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The incident became a chilling memory, one that would resurface in quiet moments, in whispered tales of Halloween lore. Then, a couple of months later, a construction crew made a grim discovery in an old, unused building a few blocks from Sarah's place. Buried beneath the floorboards, they found the remains of a young girl, still dressed in a school uniform. The town mourned as the news broke. Katie had been found. It was concluded that she had been there long before our Halloween party, the reality of which sent shivers down my spine. If Katie had been dead, then who had come to the party in her likeness? Who had followed me home? The questions haunt me. Each Halloween, as I lock my doors and turn off the lights, I'm reminded of that night, of the eyes behind the mask. And I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, someone or something is still watching, waiting, wearing their last costume. Halloween has always been a neighborhood affair. Families getting together, kids dressed in costumes going from house to house, and everyone indulging in the playful spirit of the season. I always looked forward to it. Every year, I'd place a large bowl of candy on my porch with a sign saying, "Take one." I figured it's more fun for the kids to choose their candy, and it gave me the chance to enjoy the festivities without being interrupted every few minutes by a doorbell. That year, the evening started like any other. Children giggling, spooky decorations lit up, and the scent of pumpkin spice filled the air. As dusk settled, the first group of trick-or-treaters appeared on my driveway. Peering from my window, I saw them take their candies, respecting the take one rule. It always warmed my heart to see. By the time the night was in full swing, I'd lost count of how many children had visited. Sometime around 9 p.m., I decided to check the candy bowl. To my surprise, it was empty. That was unusual. While I expected to run out of candy, it usually happened much later. I refilled the bowl, making a mental note to buy more candy next year. As I was about to head back inside, something caught my eye. Another bowl, identical to mine, sat a few feet away, obscured by shadows. Puzzled, I moved closer. It was filled with candy, but it wasn't mine. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. How had it gotten there? Curiosity piqued. I reached into this mysterious bowl and picked up a piece of candy. It felt off. The wrapper seemed a tad too tight, the texture of the candy beneath harder than it should be. I put it back, deciding to move the bowl inside and investigate further. Back in the brighter light of my kitchen, I unwrapped one of the candies. My heart dropped. Inside wasn't a sweet treat, but a small, tightly folded piece of paper. I carefully opened it, revealing a crudely drawn smiley face. Nothing else. The eerie simplicity of it sent shivers down my spine. Who would do this? And why? I felt a compulsion to check the other candies. Unwrapping another revealed a similar note, this time with the words, "Look behind you." I jerked around, half expecting to see someone in my house, but there was no one. Only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant laughter of children outside. The next candy had a note which read, "You're not alone." My pulse quickened. My house felt suddenly too big, every shadow a potential hiding spot. I grabbed my phone, deciding to call the police. As I dialed, I took one last look at the bowl. To my horror, among the candies, there was a small key. An unmistakable key that looked eerily similar to my spare one, which I'd always kept hidden outside. I realized with a sinking feeling that someone had not only switched the candy bowls, but had also found my spare key. The line connected, and I quickly explained the situation to the dispatcher, who advised me to go to a safe place and wait for the officers to arrive. Hiding in my bedroom, every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind outside sounded amplified. Each second felt like an eternity as I waited, praying for the reassuring sight of police lights. And then, a soft, deliberate knock echoed from the front door, followed by another, and then another. The knocks grew louder, more insistent. The rhythmic pattern suggested it wasn't a random visitor. Panic surged through me. Was it the intruder, playing another twisted game? Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a notification, nearly making me jump out of my skin. It was a message from an unknown number. "I can see you." Chilled to the bone, I peered out of the small gap between the curtains. Across the street, in the faint glow of a street lamp, I saw a silhouette holding a phone. The figure waved, a slow, mocking gesture. Tears blurred my vision. The police seemed to be taking forever. In desperation, I dialed a neighbor's number, praying they'd answer. "Hello?" Mrs. Bennett's familiar voice echoed in my ear. "Mrs. Bennett," I whispered, trying to hold back my panic. "Someone's in my house. Can you see anything from your window?" She paused, then in a hushed voice replied, "Dear, there's a police car parked outside your house right now." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. If the police were outside, then who was knocking on my door? The realization hit me hard. The person texting wasn't the intruder, but someone trying to warn me. The knocks continued, growing louder, more frenzied, and then it stopped. An eerie silence filled the air. Minutes felt like hours until I finally heard the reassuring voice of an officer calling out. Cautiously, I emerged from my room to find two officers in my living room. They quickly checked the entire house but found no sign of a forced entry. The only evidence of the terrifying ordeal was the switched bowl and the notes. The police took the bowl and candies for investigation. They also advised me to stay with someone for a few days and to change all the locks. Days turned into weeks. Life slowly went back to normal, or as normal as it could be. The fear, however, lingered, casting a shadow over every corner of my home. The investigation yielded little. The candies and notes were generic, purchased from a local store. No fingerprints or other identifiable marks were found. But then, on a chilly November evening, I received a package. Inside was my candy bowl, returned from the police station, along with a letter. The letter was from an anonymous Good Samaritan. It read, "I saw someone near your porch that night. They looked suspicious, and when I approached, they fled. I tried to warn you through texts but couldn't call because my voice box was damaged in an accident years ago. I wanted to let you know you weren't truly alone that night." Tears welled in my eyes. In the midst of all the terror, there was someone watching over me. The switched bowl became a grim reminder of that fateful night, but also a symbol of hope. I never found out who my silent protector was, but I remained forever grateful. Halloween in the neighborhood changed after that. We became closer, more vigilant, always looking out for each other. But one thing remained certain. I never left candy out on my porch again. It started as an innocent Halloween decoration. My family had always celebrated Halloween with gusto. We'd carve pumpkins, string up orange and purple lights, and place decorations around our property. But this year, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to build my scarecrow. I'd seen tutorials online. It looked easy enough. Some old clothes, straw, a burlap sack for the head, and voila, a scarecrow. I spent an entire weekend crafting it, ensuring it was as creepy and realistic as possible. I was particularly proud of the face, which I'd painted with dark, hollow eyes and an unsettlingly wide smile. I placed the scarecrow near the garden, its lifeless form looking eerily authentic amid the drying autumn foliage. The first few days were uneventful. The scarecrow did its job, becoming the centerpiece of our Halloween display. Neighbors commented on its realistic appearance, some even asking if I'd bought it from a professional haunted house. But then, strange things began to happen. One morning, as I left for work, I noticed the scarecrow was in a slightly different position. Its arms, previously outstretched in a T pose, were now slightly lowered, as if it was reaching out. I thought maybe the wind or a pesky raccoon had altered its stance, so I corrected its position and thought nothing more of it. The next day, however, it had moved again. This time, its head, which I was sure was fixed looking straight ahead, was now tilted, gazing directly at my bedroom window. A shiver ran down my spine. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was just my imagination. Things escalated quickly after that. The following evening, after returning home, I found the scarecrow much closer to the house than before. It was no longer in the garden, but now stood right by the back door. My heart raced. I was certain I hadn't moved it. I called out to see if any family members were playing a prank, but everyone denied it. We collectively decided it was probably some local kids playing a joke, moved the scarecrow back, and went on with our evening. But as night approached, my unease grew. The wind outside howled, sending shadows dancing across my room. I kept imagining those hollow eyes and wide smile right outside my window. Sleep eluded me. It was around midnight when I heard a soft, raspy scratching sound coming from the ground floor. Every horror movie I'd ever watched flashed before my eyes. I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling or perhaps an animal, but the sound persisted, growing louder. Summoning up courage, I crept downstairs, clutching a flashlight. The scratching sound guided me towards the back door. When I flashed the light in its direction, my heart stopped. The scarecrow was pressed against the window, its painted eyes and smile now eerily lifelike, and its straw-filled hand scraping against the glass. I stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. The room was plunged into darkness, save for the soft glow from outside illuminating the scarecrow's silhouette. My breath caught in my throat, and every instinct screamed for me to run. But where? It was blocking the only way out. Suddenly, the back door creaked open slowly. The scarecrow, propelled by some unseen force, began to shuffle inside. Its movements were stiff and unnatural, like a puppet being jerked by its strings. I tried to shout, to call for my family, but terror had gripped my voice. I backed away, searching for anything I could use as a weapon. My hand landed on an old fireplace poker. Grasping it, I faced the intruder. The scarecrow stopped, standing in the middle of the room, head tilted. It felt like it was sizing me up. Then, in a move that nearly froze my blood, it slowly began to raise its arm, pointing directly at me. Mustering every ounce of courage, I lunged at it, swinging the poker with all my might. It connected with a dull thud, scattering straw and fabric everywhere. I didn't stop. I hit it again and again, until it was nothing but a heap on the floor. Panting and trembling, I quickly turned on the lights. The room looked like a battle scene, strewn with straw and tattered clothing. But the scarecrow's burlap head was missing. Before I could ponder its whereabouts, I heard a muffled scream from upstairs. Dropping the poker, I raced up, dreading what I might find. My family was huddled in the hallway, eyes wide with terror. Following their gaze, I saw it. The burlap head sat at the top of the stairs, its painted face now smeared and distorted, yet the wide smile remained. We left the house immediately, spending the night at a nearby hotel. By morning light, we returned, escorted by the police. The scarecrow's remains, including the missing head, were nowhere to be found. An investigation ensued but yielded no answers. There were no footprints, no signs of a break-in, nothing. It was as if the scarecrow had come to life on its own. We decided to move shortly after. The trauma was too much, and the house no longer felt like home. It felt tainted, haunted by that Halloween decoration gone awry. Years have passed since that night, but the memories remain fresh. Every Halloween, I'm reminded of that scarecrow, its hollow gaze and haunting smile. I've avoided scarecrows ever since, fearing one might come to life once again. But the most chilling part? A few months after we moved, I received an anonymous package. Inside was a burlap sack, similar to the one I used for the scarecrow's head. And on it, painted in crude black strokes, was the all-too-familiar, eerie smile. To this day, I wonder who sent it. Was it a cruel prankster, or was it something more sinister?